All right, guys, so I'm going to step back through getting you caught up on Revit. I'm going to try my best to hit all the points. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Revit, hit F11 to go full screen, click the little pin so that it gets up out of our way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into New. This is the landing page in Revit. So we're on our virtual machines landing page. New. I am then going to hit down here and I'm going to pick the architectural template. And so the architectural template allows us to have some built-in wall types, some doors, some windows, and other things like that. So what this is going to be is we're just going to hit OK. It's going to be a project. Revit's going to kind of do a couple things in the background, and it's going to pop up with this screen. These little 4 indicators out here are important, so don't delete them. We're going to primarily work with inside of those 4. And a couple things that might pop up that I want to make sure that I address. If for some reason you do not have the property browser or you do not have the project browser and you just really have this screen and you don't have those 2 windows, I'm going to show you how to pull those back up. We're going to do that by clicking on the view, not the little X, the little view button. We're going to go to user interface. We're going to turn on project browser. We're going to go back to user interface. We're going to click on properties, and now we should have both the properties palette and the project browser. All right, so here we go. I'm using my center button on my mouse to kind of zoom and click and hold it. That'll do pan. There is a little glitch with the virtual machines. If you hold down the wheel for too long and roll, it'll kind of start zooming. Not a big deal. You can figure out how to work around it. So a couple things that I want to explain. One, in the project browser, these are basically views of a 3D model, the 3D model that we don't have yet. So what I want you to do first off is ceiling plan. I want you to go ahead and click the little minus sign next to ceiling plan to collapse those views, and that's just so that we don't accidentally click on them. So right now we have a level 1. We double click that. We can see here that we're in level 1. We can click on east elevation. You can now see that we're in the east elevation. And these here you can flip back and forth. So it's the same clicking here as it would be double clicking here. Same clicking here as it would be to double click here. There is another view that we can do. We can actually hit this little house up here, and this is going to give us a 3D view. And so we'll often come back to this 3D view. So I like to kind of keep these open. So we're going to set this up and start from the very beginning. I'm going to go into my east. It doesn't really matter which elevation view. I'm going to go into one of my elevation views. I'm just going to use east. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this, and I'm going to start relabeling these. And I'm going to relabel this lower one here as first floor plan. And I'm good with that. And it asked me, would I like to rename the corresponding views? And I'm going to hit yes. And what this means is that over here, it's going to rename this for me. So you can see here it instantly renamed that. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this one. I'm going to call this one second floor plan. Hit enter, hit yes. And now I've got one more thing that I've got to do here. I want to create another layer. And so what ends up happening is up here on the ribbon, you have these different tabs, and they take you into different portions of Revit. So it gets really complex. We're mostly going to stick with the architecture tab, the view tab, and we'll probably end up in manage eventually, but right now it's going to be architecture and view for the most part. So here we go. I need to create a roof layer. So what I have to do is I have to create, this is called a datum line. I have to create a new datum line. And if you look here over on the architecture tab, over on the right hand side, I have this little thing called a level. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of hover, and I'm going to drag this up. And right now I'm not really going to care how high I'm dragging it up. I just want to make sure that I got a dotted line and it's lined up. And I'm going to drag it over this way, and you see I got a dotted line that's lined up over here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rename this one. So I'm going to hit the little modify button over here. I'm going to double click on level, and I'm going to call this roof. You guessed it. It's going to ask me, do I want to rename the corresponding view? Here it is. Yes. You can see here it changed it to roof. All right. Now, a couple things are happening here. These elevations are intelligent. So I have 0, I have 10 feet, I have 24 feet. I'm going to go ahead and modify this. I'm going to change this to 11. I'm just going to type in 11. See, it changes it to 11 feet. I'm going to change this one to 22. Hit enter. So now I've got first floor at 0, second floor at 11, and roof at 22 feet. And right now, that's all I'm going to do in this elevation view. So I'm going to go back to my first floor plan. And you'll see here, it actually relabeled it as first floor plan. Again, I could have clicked here. I can double click on this. There's multiple ways to get around in Revit, so there we go. And if we look in 3D now, you'll see that we actually have 3 levels, right? Before we only had 2, now we have 3. Go back to my first floor plan. So now I'm going to take this, and we're just going to use a wall. And right now I'm going to leave it set for generic 8. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave everything alone. I'm not changing anything. And I'm just going to draw a building that's 40 feet wide by 20 feet deep. Okay, and you'll see Revit kind of does some of the rounding for you. And there we go. I've got my exterior walls. I'm going to go ahead and draw some interior walls. So I'm just going to drag across and click. And I'm going to drag across here. And I'm going to click. And there we go. We've got some walls. If I look at this in 3D, you'll see here, there it is. I look in elevation. You can see there it is. And I'm going to come back here. And now I'm going to go ahead and add some windows. I'm going to add a door first. So I'm going to bring a door in right here. And just to help me remember, and as we go through this, just because this is a practice one, we're going to do 1 window on this side. We're going to do 2 windows on this side. We're going to do 3 windows on the back side. And we're going to do 4 windows on the last side. Okay? And the reason why I'm doing that is so that when you look at it, you can clearly identify front as 1, left as 2, rear as 3, right as 4. So I'm going to look at one of my elevations. So let's look at this in 3D first. So we've got our 1 window. I'm going to hold down Shift and roll my mouse around, holding the wheel down. 2 windows, 3 windows, 4 windows. Okay, so we've actually got a lot done so far. We've drawn walls, we've used generic walls, we've put windows, and we've put doors in. All of the very basic variety at this point, but we're just trying to get the basics down. So here we go. Now, I want to start talking a little bit about the intelligence of what we've got going on. Right now, if I highlight this wall, I can look over here in my properties palette. My properties palette is going to be a place where I have a whole lot of information. One, it's going to tell me what sort of wall it is. It's going to tell me what my location line was. It's going to tell me my base constraints, my offsets, structural. There's a bunch of stuff that's happening inside of here. But what I'm primarily going to focus on right now is, where is my base constraint? And let me explain what base constraint is. Base constraint is, where's the bottom of this constraint to? Well, it tells me right here, my base constraint is my first floor plan. My first floor plan is located at 0. Okay? Now, if I change this and I say, you know what, I don't want my floor plan at 0. I want my floor plan at, say, 2 feet. I'm just going to type in 2. And I want you to watch what happens to the bottom of this wall. And also watch what happens to the top of the wall. The bottom of the wall moved up. The top of the wall moved up. And now it's connected. I'm going to move it back to 0. The bottom of the wall moved down. The top of the wall moved down. Okay? The bottom of the wall is constrained to 0. It's constrained to, I'm sorry, the bottom of the wall is constrained. So I've got all my exterior walls selected. Bottom of my walls are constrained to the first floor plan. When I modified the first floor plan location, the walls moved according to that constraint. The next thing I have here is unconnected height. So I have a height, and it says it's 20 feet tall, which makes sense. If we look at this is 22. It looks to be a couple feet short of that, so it does make sense that that's 22 feet. Now, I could come in here and I could change this, and let's say I wanted to make it 25 feet tall. I hit enter, and you can look here, and what happened? My walls went taller now. My interior walls stayed short because I didn't have them selected. I only have my exterior walls. But my wall now is 25 feet tall. I can make this 16 feet tall. Give it a second to regenerate. There we go. So what I want to do at this point is I don't want to make this a variable that I can modify through just a height. I want to actually do a top constraint. So just like the bottom constraint, I locked it to the first floor plan. This time I'm going to lock it to the roof. So I'm going to come in here for my top constraint, and I'm actually going to select roof. And then I'm going to hit apply. Now, just like what happened with the first floor plan, if I change this to negative, let's change it to negative 2 feet. Move down, the windows moved down, the wall height actually got taller. Because you can see here it's connected to the base, but it stayed connected to the roof, which is completely different than what happened the last time. So I'm going to go back out here. I'm going to grab these walls again, go back into my east elevation to kind of show you what I'm getting to here. I'm going to change the roof height this time. Oh, let me see here. I'm just going to change the roof height, and I'm going to change this to 28 feet. Hit enter. The walls got taller, because now what we've done is we've locked those walls to the datum of the roof, the level of the roof. So I'm going to actually drop this back down to 22. I'm going to bring this back up to 0. And there we go. We're back to where we want it to be. So right now what we've got going on is we've basically gotten the exterior walls to be locked from the base constraint of the first floor plan to the top constraint of the roof level. Now, what does that mean for my interior walls? So if I look at this as a 3D, those interior walls are a little too tall if they're only a first floor, or they're a little too short if they were supposed to be 2-story. So realistically, I want to make these things 1-story walls. I want to make them be first floor plan walls only. So I'm going to go ahead and look back at my floor plan. I'm going to go ahead and select this and this. And what we've done now is we've got those two selected. I'm going to look at what my constraints are set at. Well, again, my base constraint is set to first floor plan. My top constraint says unconnected, but it's at a 20-foot tall height. Again, I don't want this thing to be a number that I'm setting. I want it to be stuck to one of my levels, one of my preset levels. So I actually want my base constraint to be my first floor plan, but I want my top constraint to be my second floor plan. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to highlight, because I'm still selected, believe it or not. Even though I'm not in the same view, they're still selected. I'm going to change my height to be second floor plan. And I'm going to hit apply. And I want you to watch what happens on my screen. Nothing. Nothing changed. You couldn't see anything visually that changed. But what you will see right here is it tells me now my unconnected height is grayed out. I can't modify it, but it tells me it's 11 feet. Well, where is it pulling that 11-foot number from? And where it's pulling it from is if we go back here and we look at this, that 11-foot was set here. So if I change this to 12 and I hit enter, let's go back to my floor plan. Let's click on this wall and this wall. Let's look at the height now. Well, it says top constraint up to second level. Look at the height now. It says 11 feet. We go back. Let's change this down to 11. Let's go back to our floor plan. Let's reselect these two walls, and you'll see now they're back down to 11 feet. So these now have become intelligent. So if you look at it in 3D now, you'll see that those walls are much shorter. We're down at that second floor height. If we look way out here and select it, you can kind of see where the second floor would be. You can see that they're perfectly in line with the second floor. If I select my top wall plane, you'll see that my walls are at the top. If I select my bottom plane, you'll see that my bottom of my walls are constrained to the first floor. So we've made some pretty intelligent things here now. These things are all smart. They're all connected. Again, I'm going to click back on my architecture tab. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add a couple more doors. Click, click. I could actually flip these doors by just using these little tools here. So I just click here, flips them around. And I've got some doors now. So I've got a living room and a bedroom, whatever. It doesn't matter. An office and an office and an office, or a meeting room and an office and an office. And again, at this point, we've only used generic items. So we have this very with this very generic 3D view, but it's getting us using Revit. It's locking our constraints in. We're utilizing various constraints, top constraints, base constraints. And so now I'm ready to push in, and we're going to go to a more complex system. What we're going to do is we're going to get away from these generic walls. We're actually going to start looking at these walls, and we're going to create our own wall. So like what you've seen today, I'm going to pop this up. And I'm going to just step through what you see on this whiteboard behind me. Do me a favor, take a screenshot or a photo of what you see, because I'm going to need you to utilize this during creating this wall. So I'm just going to step through it and talk you through it. We're going to be focused primarily on this one, and then we're going to come back to this one, and I'll flip back. So I'm going to look at this from an exterior standpoint. So this is the outside air. Over here on this side of the wall, this is the inside. So we have our first layer is going to be our brick. So our brick has a thickness of 4 inches. All right, so we got an exterior, we've got a layer of brick. Our next item that we have here is actually going to be our air gap, and I've got them listed up in order up here for you. So we've got brick, we've got an air gap, and an air gap of 1 inch. Our next layer is this very thin layer, and that's actually our air barrier. And I have that at 0 inches, and I'm going to explain how we make that happen in Revit, but just note that it is 0 inches. So we've got brick, we've got an air space, and then we've got an air barrier. So here we go, brick, air barrier. The next item that we're going to have is actually going to be this gap right here, and that's going to be OSB sheathing or plywood sheathing, and that's going to have a thickness of 7/16 of an inch thick. Okay? After our OSB sheathing, which is here, we're going to end up with our wall framing, which we're going to use metal studs are going to be what we're going to be using for that. They are going to be 3.5 inches thick. And then we're going to go to our interior wall. This is our drywall. We're going to call this by its generic name, and it's called gypsum board. And we're going to call that gypsum board, and that's going to be a 1/2 inch thick, so 0.5. And then we end up with our interior. Space. So going from the outside in, brick 4 inches, air barrier. Air space. It's literally it's a gap of nothing. That's going to be 1 inch thick. We then go into our air barrier, which is 0 inches thick. It's basically a piece of paper. We go into our sheathing, which was our OSB sheathing, which is 7/16 of an inch thick. We go into our framing, our wall framing, which is 3.5 inches thick. And then ultimately we go to our gypsum/drywall, and that is 1/2 of an inch thick. That gets us our wall assembly built. And then we need 2 more pieces of information. We need to know where our core boundaries are. And so we're going to have 2 different core boundaries. We're going to have an interior core boundary and an exterior core boundary. And I'm just going to give you these. I'll explain what they are later. Our exterior core boundary is going to be right here at this red star. And that's on the outside edge of the frame. And we're calling that our exterior core. Our interior core is going to be on the opposite side of that frame wall. So that line right there is going to be our interior core. And again, I'll make that make more sense as we go. So document this wall as the exterior wall. And then while I'm up here, I'm going to go ahead and explain this wall to you real quick. This is going to be, let me go back to this one. This is our exterior wall. This is going to be our perimeter walls that go around the outside of our building. Okay, it's got the brick, it faces outward. We're going to have our windows in this. This one here is going to be our interior partition. So this is going to be a wall that's going to separate 2 offices or 2 bedrooms or 2 whatever. But this is not exposed to the outside air. So this is simply an interior partition, which makes it a little confusing. We're still going to call it interior exterior, but that's just because the software needs to run that way. So we're going to develop this wall, and this is a very simple wall. This has a piece of gypsum board, drywall. That's a 1/2 inch thick. We have studs. The studs are going to be 3.5 inches thick. And then we have another gypsum board, which is going to be a 1/2 inch thick as well. This one here, we're actually going to have our core, our exterior or interior core is going to be there, and the other one's going to be there. So it's going to kind of be ignoring the drywall. That's after the wall is built. All right, I think that's enough. I'm going to let you take a photo of that so that you can at least read that. And I'm going to go ahead and flip over to Revit and get back to assembling this wall. All right, so let's come back here and let's start working on this wall. So I'm going to highlight this wall to start out with. This is one of our generic 8-inch walls. We're going to start modifying this to be our new wall that we're going to design based on that criteria that we just discussed in the back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Edit Type button. And this is going to pull up an interface in Revit that you're going to have to get really familiar with. You're going to use this fairly often. There is a little preview button down here, which I do suggest clicking on, so it's a little fly out. And then also there's a secondary button here. It says Floor Plan or Section View. I typically like to work in the floor plan view until I get most of it developed, and then I like to flip over to the section view. You'll see why in a moment, but I'm going to put it in floor plan mode. And now is for the absolute biggest step. If you miss this, you will mess it up. So don't miss it. We're going to click on Duplicate. That button right there does a very important function. What it's going to do is it's going to take this generic wall and it's going to make a copy of it. And it's going to allow us to make a new name and make a new file without destroying this generic 8 definition. So I'm going to hit Duplicate. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this Walker-ext wall. Okay? Actually, I'm sorry, ext brick wall. On 2x4. Okay, exterior brick wall on 2x4. Walker-ext brick wall on 2x4, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. That's defining a new name so that we're going to be able to look in a list of a whole bunch of different wall types, and we're going to be able to go, I want that Walker brick wall that's on a 2x4, and it's going to be easily identifiable because we're using a very intelligent name, very simple to read, very simple to understand. And realistically, we haven't done anything yet. You can see here we still have a wall. The wall is nothing, right? So there's a button right here that says Structure, and there's an Edit button. We're going to click on the Edit button. And what this section is going to do is this is going to allow us to start creating this wall. And you can see here, this is going to be where we're going to insert a bunch of layers. So right now, the only layer we have is something called Structure. It's Structure Category 1. And it says Material by Category. That's because this was that wall that was called Generic. So they left it generic. There is no material assigned. And it was 8 inches thick. So we're going to come in here and we're going to start making our new wall. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by selecting an Insert New Layer. And I'm going to kind of be very simple about this. We're going to start, and I'm just going to start on the outside and work my way in. So the first thing that we had on that list that we just worked on was we had brick. And so I'm going to go ahead and select brick. I'm going to go ahead and select Finish 1. And then under Material, I'm going to highlight it, and there's a little triple dot. And that little triple dot's going to pull up my material browser. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply type in brick. It's going to find me brick. I'm going to use common brick, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, I'm going to give this a thickness. And I want you guys to caution yourself, because normally you guys type in 4, move on. Well, unfortunately, I just made that 4 feet thick. I want to make it 4 inches. I have to be very careful to type in 4 inches. Make sure you use that inch mark. So now what you can see is I have one layer called brick. Here it is. And I have one layer called Structure, which is 8 inches thick, which is here. So right now, my brick is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit insert again. And right now I'm not going to sweat the order of this. I'm just going to kind of put stuff in, and then I'm going to walk us through how to put this in order so that we build our wall assembly. All right, so my next thing that I'm going to do is we had brick and then we had air. So I'm going to click on this little category. I'm going to pull it down, and you'll see one in here called air layer. Click on air. I want to select a material, so I hit material, and you guessed it, I'm actually going to type in air and look for air. And there is material for air. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Well, my air needs a thickness, and according to that diagram that we had in the background, we made our air 1 inch thick. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to hit new layer again. And the next one that we're going to do is we're going to work on that, that air infiltration layer, which we called up top, we said it was the air barrier, we called it, and that was going to be 0 inches thick. So one of the things that happens in Revit is the only layer that you're allowed to have 0, or the only function that you're allowed to have 0 inches thick is called a membrane layer. So we're going to go ahead and select membrane layer. We're going to go ahead and type in, click on our materials, click our little triple dot, and we're going to type in air again. And you'll see here there's something called air infiltration barrier. We're going to go ahead and select that, hit OK. And it's already set to 0 by default, so we're ready for the next layer. So going back through that order, remember we had brick, we've got it, right here it is. We've got the air, which is right here, and then we had that air membrane layer, which is here. So now we have another layer, and this was that sheathing, that OSB sheathing. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a new one. I'm going to go ahead and put this in as a substrate. And I'm going to click on the dot, dot, dot. And this one's actually not called OSB in here. We're just going to call this plywood. We're going to let it search up plywood. And you'll see here it says plywood sheathing. We're going to go ahead and OK that one. And we're going to give this a thickness of 7/16 of an inch. Make sure you don't forget the inch mark again. There we go. It's right there. We got 2 more layers to create. The next layer is going to be our framing. And then we've got our drywall. So this is going to get a little bit trickier because we already had the structure down here, and we really don't need this. So we're actually going to go ahead and use this as our wall stud. So we're going to leave structure as structure 1. We're going to click on our little dot, 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 and we're actually going to set this to stud. So I'm going to type in stud, and you'll see here that we have one that says metal stud layer. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize that. That gives us a metal stud, and we're going to change the thickness of this. And according to our diagram that we did behind me, we said that it's going to be 3.5 inches thick. And we're going to go ahead and insert one more layer. And this layer here is going to be our finish level 2. So here we go finish 2. This is our gypsum board. So I'm going to go back to my little triple dot. I'm going to type in GYP. Just type in GYP, you should get gypsum wallboard. I'm going to highlight gypsum wallboard. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to give this a thickness of 0.5 inches or 1/2 inches. There we go. I've got all of my layers. They're not in the right order, but I've got my layers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sorting these and put them in the right order. And there's a very important thing that you need to pay attention to. There's a little word here that says exterior side. And there's a word down here that says interior side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sorting these things out. And I know on the very, very outside is my brick. So I'm going to highlight my brick, and I'm going to hit up, 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 up. And I'm going to get it all the way to the outside. You can see it way out here. The next thing I have is my air. So I'm going to find my air. I'm going to bring that up. So I've got brick, then air. And then I'm going to have my air infiltration barrier. So I'm going to bring that up. So I got brick, air, infiltration. And then I've got my sheathing. So I bring that up. After sheathing, we're going to have our core boundary. So if you remember behind me, I put that little red star, and I put it on the edge of my stud. So we went core boundary, and then we went stud. So I've got to bring this up. And then we went core boundary. So I'm going to bring core boundary up. And then last but not least, we have our interior finish of drywall. So I'm going to step through the layers here. Finish. So layer 1 is going to be finish layer brick, 4 inches thick. Layer 2 is going to be air, thermal/air layer. It is air. It's going to be 1 inch thick. Then we've got membrane layer, the air infiltration barrier at 0 inches thick. Substrate 2 at plywood sheathing at 7/16 of an inch thick. We have a core boundary. We have a structure 1, which is metal stud layers, and that's going to be 3.5 inches thick. We have a core boundary again. And then finally, we have a finish number 2, and that's a gypsum wall board at 1/2 of an inch thick. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I want you guys to take note of those green little lines. Those green lines are actually our core boundary. So if I move that green line down, you can see it went away. I'm going to move this one up, and you'll see it bouncing up the order. Okay, so you'll see now it's out. There it is, and then it would go out on the brick. So I'm going to bring that back down. That's where I want it. I want it on the outside of my stud. I want the inside core boundary to be on the inside of my stud, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And then I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to show this to you in section, and this is going to be the view that I gave you guys up on the board. So you can see here we have brick, we have air, we have a very, very thin layer of that air infiltration layer. We have our plywood sheathing, and then we have our core boundary, then we have our metal stud, we have our core boundary, and then we have our sheathing. So what we've done is we've generated this really nice wall. It's got a lot of information involved or included in it. And once I get to this layer, I would hit apply, and then I'm going to hit OK. And it looks like I did nothing. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to highlight this wall, and you'll see here now it says basic wall, wall exterior brick on 2x4. But if I click on this other wall, it still says generic 8. Okay, and I want you to leave it like that for 1 second because I want to show you what we just did. If we zoom in here, it really doesn't look like we did much. This one looks a little bit thicker than this, but it doesn't look like we did much. And the reason why it doesn't look like we did much is because we have our view settings down here set to coarse, which basically we do that to save memory. So I want to change 2 things here. One, I'm going to change this to say 1/2 inch equals a foot. So you see here that the line's thinned up. I can read a little more detail in here. It looks like a nicer looking drawing. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this little detail level, and now I'm going to select medium. And I want you guys to look at that. That's that wall we just made. We just gave all of that intelligence: brick, air barrier, sheathing, wall, drywall. But you can see the other wall is still the generic wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight this. I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm going to select the other exterior walls. Quite simply, I'm just going to come up here. I'm going to select this, scroll towards the bottom, and you'll see here I have my Walker exterior wall. Highlight that, and I want you guys to look at that. It filled in that corner, made these walls look perfect. This is ready to go. So now that we've done our exterior walls, we're going to do our interior walls. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, and I'm actually going to highlight both of them at the same time so we don't have to make a secondary selection. Again, we're just going to repeat the process. I'm going to hit Edit Type. I'm going to hit Duplicate. This time I'm going to call it Walker-Interior 2x4 wall. I'm going to hit OK. So Walker-INT 2x4 wall. Hit OK. Go to Edit, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to start with this first one that's already here, and I'm just going to call this stud. Right? So this is that one that was literally gypsum board stud, gypsum board done. So I'm going to hit OK. I know that this is going to have a thickness of 3.5 inches, so I'm going to type in 3.5 inches. Hit OK. Insert a new layer. Insert a new layer. And I'm going to go ahead and move these where I want them to be. I'm moving that one above. I'm moving that one below. So I've got this thing built, right? I want to change this from structure to finish 2. I'm going to change this to gypsum board. So I come back in here, GYP, gypsum, okay. Give it a thickness, 1.5 inches. I'm sorry, 0.5 inches. I've got the next one that I already did. It says structure, metal stud, 3.5. And then I got to basically do what I did on this first one down here, right? So I'm going to highlight this one. I'm going to change it from structure to finish 2. Change this material, GYP again, GYP, highlight gypsum, hit OK, 0.5 of an inch, 0.5 inch, click. I'm just going to zoom in for fun. You can see here I've got my gypsum board, my green line. Let's see if I can select something different. Got my gypsum board, my core boundary. I've got my metal stud, I've got my core boundary, and then I've got my gypsum board. So if you remember back to my little drawing, 1/2 inch, 3.5, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 3.5, 1/2 inch. So there we go. We've got everything set. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And look, our wall's updated. They're now our interior partition walls. You can see here that our doors, they went in where they should go. I'm actually going to move this window over so that I can show you how I would add a closet. I'm just going to click on architecture, click on walls. I'm not going to save it right now. And you can see here right now the generic 8 inch is selected. I don't want that one. I want to come down to my list. I'm going to find my Walker interior wall, and I'm going to draw a closet. And I'm going to draw another closet up here. And I'm going to move this window so that my window is not in my closet. I was going to take this thing and move it over here. All right, enough. So there we go. I've got my exterior walls drawn. I've got my interior walls drawn. I could add in some more doors. I could add in a closet door. I could add in another closet door. I want to line these two up. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this door and kind of nudge it over a little bit. I'm going to use my align tool. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to hit align, and I want that to align to this one. And I'll click here and you'll see here that they're aligned. I could lock them together. If I ever come in here to modify this, move this over, you'll see that they both move together. And that's going to be indefinitely locked together unless I actually physically hit this unlock button and then grab this one and move this one over and move this one over. Okay, so you can lock things together by using different constraints. There's a ton of things that you can do with inside Revit. I could grab both of these at the same time and then move them over. I normally could do that. I don't know what I did wrong, but anyways, you can do that. You can line them up. Let's see, what else did we go over real quick? So right now we have our east elevation. You can see here, basically we have our view. You can see here I have my walls, and you see I made a mistake. I hope you see I made a mistake. I actually drew those closets in, and I didn't set the height. I didn't set the top constraint for my wall. So you can see that it actually made them 20 feet tall. And so I'm going to have to go back to my first floor plan and grab these walls. I'm going to use my control. I'm going to use my control button and select them all. And you can see over here what happened was I had them set for 20 feet. I didn't have them connected. So I want to reconnect these to my second floor. And now if I look back at the 3D, you'll see that they're down to the right height. All right, so I want to talk about two more things. One, this view, even though I can start to see my brick, it's not real pretty. I'm going to go ahead and hit this little box, and I'm going to change that to shaded. And now you can see here I'm starting to get it to look a little more realistic. It's not rendered. It just helps us, start to see some materials and things like that. It puts colors and things. As you zoom in, you can see it a little bit better. All right, so let me go back to my floor plan view. And I want to touch on those core, the core and some other things. So I'm going to go back into my wall, and I want you guys to take note of this line right here, this green horizontal line that goes all the way across. Pretty much any command I'm getting into. So I'm in a wall, I get one of these bars. I'm in a door, I get one of these bars. I'm in a window, I get one of these bars. I'm in a component, I get one of these bars, right? So, and you'll see that that actually changes. The information that's on that changes based on what kind of item I'm in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to primarily focus on the wall and what the options are. And again, this is called our options bar. So quite simply, I'm going to click on architecture, wall, and there's a bunch of stuff here. Number one, height. So if I draw a wall, right now it's going to draw it at 20 feet tall. If I change that to 100 feet and draw a wall, that wall will be 100 foot. So I'm just going to draw a wall that's 100 feet long. And I'm going to look at it in 3D so you can see that's 100 foot tall, right? It's a very tall wall. I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to highlight that by clicking modify, highlight it, hit delete, go back into my wall. Obviously, I don't want it to be 100 feet tall. But right here, there's a little button that says connected. What do I want to connect it to? It's always going to base constraint to whatever floor I'm currently on. So since I'm on the first floor plan, my base constraint is going to be my first floor plan. My top constraint is either going to be designated by height or it's going to be designated by what I want to connect it to. So I want to connect it to my first floor plan or my second floor plan. So if I drew a wall in here, I'm just going to kind of draw it close so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to show it to you in 3D again. But you can see here, the wall I drew is at the right height. Okay, so that's lined up with the top of these. That would be the desired result for that wall. So I'm going to highlight this wall again, and I'm going to just hit delete and delete it. So let's talk about the line location. So as I step through this, right now I have the I'm going to set the height to roof because I want to redraw this building to the exterior. Okay, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select the wall type. I want the exterior wall. So I want the exterior wall. I want the base constraint to be first floor plan, and that's designated by what floor I'm on. Okay, so I'm here, so that's where the base constraint is going to be. I want the top constraint to be up to the roof, so I selected top. And now I have another option here. I have wall center line, core center line, finish face exterior, finish face interior, core face exterior, and core face interior. All of these have their place, and we're going to use them in different spots. In most of what we do, we're primarily going to focus with core face exterior, and we might focus a little bit on finished face exterior. We'll talk about them in a minute. But what I want to do is I want to draw a couple of these, and I want to make sure that this all makes sense. So I'm going to flip back over to my whiteboard, and I'm going to show you what these all mean. Okay, so we have wall center line. Okay, so what Revit is identifying as a wall, if it's identifying from the out of the out to the in of the in, it doesn't really care about like what's what. It's just saying from here to here, how big is it? It's 12 inches. Well, the center line's at 6 inches. And that might fall like right here in the middle of the area. Revit doesn't care. It's literally going, what's the exterior face? What's the interior face? Get me the dead center. That is wall center line. Often not used, but you may find an occasion to use wall center line. Then we're going to have core center line. Okay, so let's go back to what our cores were. We located our cores very specifically. We said our exterior core was right here. We said our interior core was right here. What Revit's going to do is it's going to go, where is exterior? Where is interior? There they are. Find me the center of those two. Now that one becomes very handy. And we would use that in a situation like this because our core would be here, our core would be here, our center of our core would be here. And I know what you're thinking, well, isn't that the same as the exterior? Yes. In this example, what would happen if we needed a double layer of drywall on this side? Okay? But we still wanted to use the center of the stud. Because we set our cores, it's going to select the center of the stud. If we did wall center line and we had a second layer of drywall out here, it would select between these two. So on this one, probably technically not an issue. You could either choose wall center line or you could choose core center line. I always tell you to spend time using the core center line, because if we had to go back and modify this for some reason, and this had to go to 5/8 inch drywall, but this one had to stay 1/2 inch, your walls wouldn't shift. And if you had it on the other one, it would shift. Okay, so we've gone through wall center line, which is out to out, dead center, out to out, dead center, and then we went core center line, which are our identified core lines, the center of those. The next one that we have is finished face exterior. Revit goes, what's the outmost thing to the exterior? Oh, it's the edge of the brick. That's what we're going to use as our line. That's what we're going to draw from. Ignore everything to the inside. Everything just comes inside. Quite the opposite. We have finished face interior. In this example, it would use the drywall, and that will be the line that you would draw. So as you draw your line, you draw your wall, you have drywall and your brick will be on this way, right? The other one was finished face exterior. As you draw your line, your brick would be here, and then your interior would come this way. Okay, so they're exactly the opposite of one another. Our last two are going to be core face exterior and core face interior. What that means is that core face exterior, this is the core closer to the exterior. It's going to use that line to draw your wall. Your core face interior would obviously use the core face that's closer to the inside. The one that we're primarily going to use is going to be your exterior core face. Okay, and I'm going to demo these on Revit so that you can see how. All right, guys, so I'm going to demo these wall locations, and a couple things I want to do is just review this option bar. So the first thing I want you to look at is, as I click on different things, you'll see that this option bar, this green bar that goes across, it's dynamic, so it changes. If I'm doing components, it gives me certain options. If it gives me windows, it gives me certain options. Doors, other options. Most importantly, we're going to focus on walls right now. It gives me a lot of options. One of the things right off the bat that we've already talked about is quite simply the height constraints. So I'm going to go ahead and select the exterior wall because we're going to redraw this floor plan. The next thing I want to look at is height. So right now it's constrained to second floor. I actually want that exterior constrained to the roof, so I'm able to change that. And as I went around this, you would see that that would generate my wall from the base constraint, which is whatever view you're currently on. I'm currently on first floor plan. It's going to build that up to the roof level, which is our desired result. So what I want to look at right now is I want to look at these different wall locations. And the first wall location is wall center line. So as I described up on the board, wall center line is quite simply going to be that. So I'm just going to click a little wall here. And you'll see that if I highlight this and show you where that little dot is, it's literally in the dead center of that wall. So that's wall center line. Go back to walls, change my wall center line to core center line, and I'm going to draw another wall. Okay, and you'll see that the location's different. It's locating it not at the center of the wall, but it's locating it at the center of that stud. So as I click that, escape and click on that, you'll see here that little dot again is now located in the middle of that line to that line, because we have identified that that line is our exterior core, that line is our interior core. We're telling Revit to use the core center line, which is going to be the middle of those two. So let's go finish face exterior. You got this one. This one's going to be the outside. So it's going to draw from this point. So I'm just going to kind of draw it up here. You'll see here. It goes across the top. That's the exterior. Click on it. Again, highlight it. You'll see that the line is located at the exterior face. We're going to do the last couple just because we're going to step through all of them. We got interior face, which you guessed it, is going to be down here. It's going to be the inside. Click. You'll see this one here is the dot, the top dot. This one down here is going to be the lower dot. Interior, exterior. Let's keep going. We got 2 or 3 more left. We've got core face exterior. Well, we've identified this line right here as the core face. This And this one here is the core face, but this one's the interior core face. This one is the exterior core face. So this one's actually going to draw it right about from that line. Okay, so there we go. Got that one drawn in. And you guys don't need to see the last one, but I'm going to do it anyways. We've got core face interior, which is going to be this line. That's going to be our start point. You can see it right there. Boom. Click. And it combined those two by accident, but you guys got the point. Let me just draw that one more time. Click. Done. Okay, so those are our different wall locations. It all draws the same wall, but it just draws them in different locations. So let's go ahead and redraw this shape. We always want to draw in a clockwise motion. I've got my exterior wall selected. I've got my height connected to roof. And I'm going to use my exterior core face, my core face exterior. And let's go ahead and draw this building. So I'm going to drag this over. And I'm going to type in 40, hit enter, drag it down, 20, drag it over, 40, and drag it up and click just to lock in the corner. You'll see here it's locked in. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my interior wall. So I'm going to click on my wall. I'm going to come down here, the Walker interior. Now the difference is I do not want this one to go up to the roof. I only want this one to go up to the second floor plan, and I don't want to use core face. I want to actually use core center line, and you'll see here I'm just going to kind of come across here at some arbitrary spot, draw a line, draw a wall, come across this one. I'm going to grab it from approximately the middle and drag that across. There we go. And you'll see here I'm going to pop in some doors and windows. I'm going to put 3 doors in. 1, 2, 3. I want to flip this door, so I just highlight it and flip it. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and add in the same amount of windows as I did before. So I hit on architecture, windows, 1 window, 2 window, 3 window, 4 windows. Okay, if all is right, these two should look very similar, other than the closets, obviously. But, I think what you guys can see at this point is that once you get rolling, once you have your stuff made, you can really start pushing through some work pretty quickly. So this will get you to where you need to be for tomorrow. I need you to have the wall types created. I need you to have the walls in, the windows in, the doors in. If you can, go ahead and pop a closet or 2 in just for fun. What we will be doing tomorrow in class is we will be adding the floor. Then we'll be cutting a hole in the floor, and we will be adding a set of steps that will take us from the lower level to the upper level. We will ultimately be putting a roof on top of this, and that will complete this little very, very intro to Revit. So have a good evening. I'll see you all tomorrow.